Whenever I listen back to something that I do, it just makes me feel weird.
Hi, my lovely.
Hi.
Welcome to America's Got Talent.
She was 13 years old, standing under stage lights built for performers 3 and 4 times her age, and for a moment, she looked like she might turn around and walk right back off. Then the music started, and the girl the world would later call Teen Janis Joplin opened her mouth, and a small town in northern England was never quite the same again. This is the story of Courtney Hadwin, a shy schoolgirl from a village of a few hundred people, who became one of the most talked-about performers in America's Got Talent history, weathered a wave of internet backlash most adults couldn't have handled, watched her biggest break get cancelled overnight, and then had to rebuild her entire career from scratch after the very label that made her famous simply disappeared. Was it worth it? By the end of this video, you may not be so sure. Courtney Hadwin grew up in Heselden, a small village in County Durham, England, the oldest of 3 children born to Paul and Anne-Marie Hadwin. She had a brother, Paul, and a sister, Melissa, both several years younger. It was an ordinary working-class upbringing, the kind of place where nobody expects the next global sensation to be hiding behind the counter of the corner shop or singing quietly to herself in the schoolyard. But Courtney wasn't like other children. By her own family's account, she had been shy for as long as anyone could remember. So shy, in fact, that her grandfather once said she sang more freely in her sleep than she did in front of people she knew. That contradiction, a girl who could barely make eye contact but who transformed the moment a microphone appeared, would come to define nearly every chapter of her early life. She attended Heselden Primary School and later studied at the Academy at Shotton Hall in nearby Peterlee, training on the side at local performing arts schools. Long before America ever heard her name, she was already chasing the stage in small, unglamorous ways, entering a national talent competition called Teen Star in Newcastle in 2015, at just 10 years old, singing a cover of a Bob Dylan ballad and reaching the grand final. A year later, she won Hartlepool's Performer of the Year award. In the summer of 2017, at 12 years old, she opened for the disco legend's Sister Sledge in front of more than 18,000 people at a festival in South Tyneside, an audience most adult musicians never perform for in their entire careers. She was also, by all accounts, a genuine music obsessive long before any camera found her. In September 2015, when she was just 11, she was filmed performing a soaring pop duet during a school lunchtime, footage that quietly began circulating locally. In January 2018, only months before her life changed forever, she sang at a charity event in Southampton raising money for children with life-limiting illnesses, a small, unpaid gig that had nothing to do with television cameras or talent scouts. It was simply what she did. She sang. None of that, however, prepared the public for what came next. In 2017, Courtney auditioned for the first UK series of The Voice Kids, performing a Tina Turner classic in her blind audition. The coach will.i.am was so struck by her stage presence that he asked her to repeat part of the performance just so he could watch her move again. She was chosen by coach Danny Jones and carried through battle rounds and semi-finals, eventually reaching the grand final, where she sang a demanding Broadway torch song from Dreamgirls before being eliminated. Along the way, in the battle rounds, she went head-to-head against 2 other young singers on a Motown classic, and in the semi-final she tackled a James Brown funk number that most professional vocalists would think twice about attempting. It was a strong run for a 12-year-old, but it was about to become a footnote in her story, not the headline. Because in June 2018, Courtney traveled to America to audition for America's Got Talent. And what happened on that stage would be replayed, dissected, and debated for years. She walked out looking exactly like the girl her grandfather described. Small, quiet, almost apologetic, barely making it through a sentence with the judges before the music queued up. And then, the instant the first note of Otis Redding's Hard to Handle hit, something in her seemed to switch on entirely. She screamed, she danced, she commanded a stage built for adults 3 times her size in presence. Simon Cowell told her on camera that when she sang she was like a lion. Judge Howie Mandel, a devoted fan of the late Janis Joplin, compared the moment to Clive Davis discovering Joplin herself at the Monterey Pop Festival decades earlier, and he meant it. He hit the golden buzzer, sending her straight through to the live shows. Within days, her audition had been watched by tens of millions of people. By the time she returned for the live quarterfinals in August, host Tyra Banks introduced her by announcing that the clip had crossed 200 million views. A 13-year-old from a village most Americans had never heard of was suddenly one of the most watched performers on the planet. But fame this sudden rarely arrives without a cost. And for Courtney, the reckoning came almost immediately, not from a scandal she caused, But from a question the internet couldn't stop asking, was any of this real? Almost as soon as Courtney became a breakout star, a wave of skepticism followed her. Viewers began circulating clips of her earlier appearance on The Voice Kids, arguing that a girl who had already competed on national television couldn't possibly be the painfully shy, first-time performer AGT had presented her as. The backlash was swift and, at times, cruel. Accusations that the show had manufactured her nerves, that her shyness was an act, that the Discovery narrative was a lie sold to millions of viewers. For a 13-year-old, that is an extraordinary amount of scrutiny to absorb. Courtney addressed the criticism directly in an interview with Forbes, and her family, friends, and teachers came to her defense, insisting her anxiety was genuine, that being shy around people and fearless on a stage weren't a contradiction, but two sides of the same person. Still, the damage of a viral backlash doesn't undo itself with one interview. She pushed forward anyway. Through the quarterfinals, semifinals, and grand finale, Courtney kept climbing, covering James Brown, Steppenwolf, and Tina Turner, holding her own against adult finalists twice her age. She ultimately placed sixth. She performed live shows in Las Vegas alongside the season's winner, and in December 2018, she signed a record deal with Psycho Music, Simon Cowell's own label, and Arista Records. In 2019, she returned for America's Got Talent, The Champions, performing her first original song, Pretty Little Thing, at just 14. Her debut EP, The Cover Sessions, followed that October. Asked about her influences, she rattled off Little Richard, James Brown, Janis Joplin, and Mick Jagger, a lineup of raspy, unruly rock and soul legends. She had officially transitioned from viral contestant to working recording artist, and was announced as a performer for Woodstock 50, sharing a bill with names like The Killers, Miley Cyrus, and Jay-Z. And then that opportunity collapsed. Woodstock 50 fell apart in the summer of 2019 amid venue losses and funding disputes, cancelled before a single ticket was sold. For an artist not yet 15, it was a hard early lesson. Even the biggest stages can vanish overnight, for reasons that have nothing to do with talent. Barely 6 months later, an even larger disruption arrived. The COVID-19 pandemic shut down live music worldwide. For a teenage artist who had built her momentum on live performance, the pandemic didn't just pause her career, it took away the one thing that had always defined her. She adapted where she could, releasing a quiet cover of John Lennon's Happy Christmas, War Is Over, from home in November 2020. But the industry around her was crumbling. A festival booking in 2021 was cancelled a second time. And at some point, quietly, without a formal announcement, Simon Cowell's Psycho Music label ceased operations altogether. Think about what that actually means for a working teenage artist. No press release. No new label swooping in. No guarantee the machine that built her career would keep running at all. Somewhere between a cancelled festival, a global shutdown, and a label quietly dissolving, Courtney Hadwin went from the next big thing to an open question. For most young artists, losing your label without a fight, a firing, or even a headline would be the end of the story. For Courtney Hadwin, it wasn't. By 2023, she resurfaced, not as a manufactured TV product, but as an independent artist. In February, she put out Breakable, a song she co-wrote herself. When a fan commented referencing Simon, Courtney replied directly, "It was all her now, completely independent, finally doing it her way." She kept releasing music at a pace that suggested urgency, not comfort. That Girl Don't Live Here in April, Call Me Back in July, then Monsters in September, an upbeat, hard-rocking song about protecting your mental health under pressure. By October, Monsters had charted at number 19 on Billboard's Hard Rock Digital Song Sales chart, with no golden buzzer and no TV show behind it. She closed the year with Christmas Rocks. The rebuilding continued into 2024. She performed for music industry legend Clive Davis, the very executive Howie Mandel had invoked years earlier, at a gala in his honor. She recorded a full live session at Metropolis Studios, signed with a new booking agency, left it when it couldn't secure her gigs, and found steadier footing with an independent manager. Slower, harder, far less glamorous than 2018, but hers. Alongside more singles, Jagged, Spellbound, You Only Love Me When I Lie, DNA, Die and Stay Pretty, in 2025, nearly 7 years after that first audition, Courtney released her debut full-length album, Little Miss Jagged. She now performs with a full band of her own and continues touring and recording into 2026. So, was Courtney Hadwin's story a tragedy? Not in the way headlines love to suggest. There was no catastrophic accident, no scandal. Her tragedy, if you can call it that, was quieter, a shy child thrust into a spotlight before she was old enough to understand its cost, a backlash she never asked for, a festival that vanished, a pandemic that took away live music at the worst possible moment, and a label that dissolved beneath her. Any one of those might have ended a less determined career. Instead, she kept coming back, until the girl who once needed a golden buzzer to be noticed didn't need one anymore. So here's the real question. Was Courtney Hadwin discovered by America's Got Talent, or did that show simply borrow a talent that was always going to make it on her own? Drop your honest thoughts below. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment below. Check out the next video for more.